In this video we're going to look at how to make a PicoTrim. So these are the parts here for the PicoTrim. You can see the circuit board, 9-volt battery, snap, we've got the regulator, a couple of capacitors, 105s, pre-programmed microchip. This one's got 2 of the MOS orbs in there. That's high voltage protection for putting it in a car or a plane. We've got the 2 rectangular LEDs and the 10 LED bar. We've got the 2 sets of 3-pin headers, the programming socket, which is optional. You don't actually need to put that on unless you're going to reprogram it. And we've got the sockets, so we've got an 8-pin and a 20-pin IC socket, and we've got all the resistors. So there's 4 180 ohm resistors. We've got a 4K7. Actually, I've put 2 in this pack. 4K7s should be 1. A 10K resistor and a 1 ohm. And actually, you'll see pre-programmed microchips. So some of them have a dot on them. Some of them don't have dots. Doesn't really matter because these are just, they're all the same. They've just been reprogrammed, especially for the PicoTrim. So they're the components. Now let's have a look at the tools we're going to use. So first of all, I like my trusty PCB holder, and to see the PCB holder we probably need to, there we go. Okay, so PCB holder does what a PCB holder does. Okay, so we can put our parts in that side and we can flip it over and solder them on the other side. That's a bit loose there, I'll just tighten that up. Okay, and we can easily spring it in and out to wherever we need it. So rule of thumb, put in the small components first, namely the resistors, because we want those as close to the PCB as possible. I like to take a resistor, hold it, pinch it, bend one wire, pinch it the other way, bend that wire, and once you have those 2, we can put it in place. This is a 180 ohm resistor, which you can tell by the color bands: brown, gray, brown, gold. And they're non-polarized. I like to put them in the way convention that you would read them, so 180R is where I would think gold should be. Now, I'm sort of just going through this quickly. This is a 4K7, yellow, purple, red, gold. So I'm going to bend those over and I'll put the gold. Doesn't matter which way. Non-polarized resistors. Get the 1 ohm. R0 is the brown, black, gold. Now I'm going to bend those out. That's a bit of a loose one. Others seem to sit in there nicely by themselves. Last of all, we'll get the 10K. We'll bend that and put it in as so. So I should be able to turn those over. Now if any of those fall out, a bit loose, some of them are, you can bend those particular wires out. The rest of them are sitting in there pretty well. Not this one. That's alright. Okay, so grab some trusty solder. This is 60% tin, 40% lead, 0.7 millimeter. This is a flux cord solder, and if you're soldering with flux core, you should turn on some exhaust fans. And the temperature of the iron on, and we just put in some solder there. Hopefully that smoke isn't getting in the way of the camera. Okay, so we sort of make sure you've got all of those. There's one in there. Blow away the smoke. Now we use some side cutters, and I actually hold on to the wire just so that they don't go randomly everywhere, so they don't poke you in the eye. Okay, resistors in place. We do really want those sitting down nice and flat, but doesn't matter too much. You can always push on them, but you'll burn your fingers. I could show you if I do it with something metallic. I can actually heat those up, push them through a little bit. Maybe not. Oh, that's fine. Not going to worry about it. Okay, so we've got those resistors in. Next smallest component is the programming socket. Now, of course, you don't need this if you're going to just use the supplied. That in so. We do want to provide a bit of a heat sink to hold that in place. So actually plug in a cable like so, flip it over, use your side cutters to bend those pins out so it doesn't fall back out. That's in place. Solder that one off. Okay, so that's in place. And take out the cable. Now, next smallest component is probably the power leads. Now, to do the power leads, we've got power up the top here, power and ground, and we actually want to use these holes as a mechanical advantage. So we're going to solder on the back. So we push this wire down through those two holes, and once that's down a good inch or so, we can put it up through the other hole, so both wires through both holes, and I'll bend that over and poke that one down like so, and I'll actually pull that back up a little bit so it's sticking through, and I did cross that one over, but that's alright. Push that one down through the hole, and I can pull that back a little Okay, so that's in place. Now when I turn it over, I don't want these wires in the way, so I can actually pull those down a little as well. Just get them out of the way. There they are. Solder those two off. To trim those a bit shorter. Pull these back through, and while we've got it there, we can twist this wire up just to keep it nice and neat. Now of course, if you're patching this into a car, you don't need the 9-volt battery snap. You want to actually hook it into the wires in your car, so positive power, negative or ground, 0 volts. If we twist that, that just keeps it a little bit neater. Ties it together a little bit. Spider. There we go. Okay, so probably the next thing is sockets. Now, orientation mark, notching is there. Getting a bit close to the side. We can move that out, maybe. This way. Make sure none of the pins are bent. If they are, straighten them up. Get them nice and straight so they go. Okay. So we've just put the wires in and the socket, and we're putting the IC socket in now. This is for the LEDs. LED bar, and we've folded over 2 corners there so that it doesn't fall out at the back. Okay, that's one IC socket. So the next one, make sure you get that notch in the correct place. Put that through. You might have to straighten some pins. Once again, this one's a little bent out of place. Straighten those pins. Line that up. There it is. While you're holding it with your thumb, bend over 2 corners. 1, 2. Holds it in place. Solder off those 8 pins. Okay. Now we can put in the capacitors. These are non-polarized, so one just goes in the top there, other one goes over here, and you probably need to bend the legs out slightly, about 45 degrees, kink them over, and they're ready to solder. Okay. Let's put in these pin headers. Now, I might just do one at a time because you can't really bend over the pins, so you have to work out some way being able to get your solder up there. Now, I don't want to touch the pin that's actually being heated. I can probably just do that, just to hold it. Here it is. Solder off the other two. It's one of those pin headers in, and I'll put in the other one there. Once again, get it about where it needs to go. Right there, hold in solder. Whatever way means you're not going to burn yourself. Okay. Some people use blue tack to hold pin headers in place, but I don't like it because it melts and leaves a mess. But if you're just starting out, it's not such a bad way. Okay, we're going to put in our regulator. Give that a bit of a kink over if you want to. That's fine. Get that in place. We can bend a couple of those pins over to hold it there. And these ones, make sure, because they're a bit wider, that you cut them off this way, not that way, or you'll actually chew out your side cutters. These are flush cut angled side cutters, so you can get in nice and close to the action. There we go. Just going to tidy up this one a little. And this one. Now looking pretty good. Now let's see if we can get these others in. So we've just got the two diodes left, LEDs to solder, and the two diodes. Well, let's put in the diodes first. LEDs first. Long leg in square is how those work. Okay, we don't want to put it down so low because we actually want to get it to the right height. So if you're going to put these ones in, they just clip in place like so, and you want to pull this up to the same height, which is about there. And when it's at that height, bend over the legs. That'll sort of hold it there in place. So even if they're not straight, you know, you can, there's enough length there to sort of play with them to get them looking pretty straight. They're not meant to sit right up against it. Okay, so next one, same thing. Don't push it down too far, just at the right height. And once you've got it there, bend those wires over. That's pretty good. I think maybe a bit too low. Doesn't really matter. Okay, here we go. One, two. Okay, I'll trim those off. I'll take this back out because I haven't checked pin 1. Pin 1 should be identified as that square up there. So this square pad is pin 1. So there's a number 1 actually here. So it goes that way. 1 is this corner here, square 1. So that's the way it goes in, like so. And you're finished there. Okay, if you're going to put this in a car or a plane, you need a couple of these MOS orbs. And you need to make sure you've got the right values. We've got a 33 volt MOS orb, and the part number on this is 1N6283A, and you'll see the part number on the circuit board. Now what this does is it protects the regulator. If the voltage spikes above 33 volts, it's going to short itself out, and essentially that stops that part from getting destroyed from a voltage spike. There we have it. Okay, so that's in place. Now the next one, this is a smaller diode. It's a 600 milliamp diode, and it's actually a 6.8 volt MOS orb. And what this means is on the other side of the regulator, we're only putting out 5 volts. So if it goes above 5 volts for any reason, then this little fella is going to protect it. Now make sure they go in the correct way with the polarity bands. So for the large one, it's pointing out this way, and the smaller one's pointing in that way. Now you shouldn't have this problem if you're using brand new ones. And that's the last thing we need to do, is put those in and solder them in place. So now that's in place, let's solder those off. Make sure they're sticking through. Yep, that's it. Okay. So I'll turn my air on. And last thing is the pre-programmed microchip. Has a little notch in it, so you just have to match that up. You might have to squeeze those together, and that's pretty much it. Okay, so let's test out the PicoTrim. Grab yourself a 9-volt battery, plug that in, and you should see the LEDs light up. Get yourself a servo motor, preferably the ones you're going to be using on the wings of your plane for the trim flaps, or in your car, or on your costume, or wherever. We plug that in with the yellow wire next to the dots, and that's already working. That's good. Now to test it out, you just need an offcut of a wire, and we're going to short out pins 1 and 2 on there, and you'll see it go up, and you'll see the servo turning. And if we short out the next 2 pins, you'll see it coming back again, and the servo is turning the other way. Now that's set at 120 degrees there, particularly for planes that need trim flap controllers. And but if you need some help changing that to a different angle, minimum and maximum, then contact me at picokit.com. Essentially what you need is a two-way switch there to plug that in, so you can click up, click down, or hold it and it'll move to different locations. And if you don't know what a trim flap controller is for on a plane, it's sort of like cruise control, and it maintains a steady angle aiming for the horizon. So that's the PicoTrim, and I do hope you've enjoyed that video, seeing how it will come together, and happy flying.